Can we control the spiritual world? Dear Lily, much of the effort to control supernatural spirits revolves around various rituals. There is ritual with a small r, which covers almost everything that humans do. This is standardized, repetitive, formalized, communicative behavior. A handshake or a kiss are good examples of this. In much of the West, the bodily movements of greeting have taken a recognized form. To shake with the left hand or kiss someone on the nose rather than the cheek would be considered strange. The handshake communicates friendship, trust, affection, or the sealing of a bargain. It is a social ritual, and if you examine your life, you'll find it's full of such actions. Such a general use of the word ritual would also cover a great deal of low-level, repetitive, obsessive behavior associated with certain forms of mental illness, such as constantly washing one's hand or brushing one's hair. Other people's rituals almost always seem odd. Here is the account, or part of it, of a visiting anthropologist who wrote an article, Body Rituals Among the Nakarima, spelled Nakarima backwards. The daily body ritual performed by everyone includes a mouth rite. This rite involves a practice which strikes the uninitiated stranger as revolting. It was reported to me that the ritual consists of inserting a small bundle of hog hairs into the mouth, along with certain magical powders, and then moving the bundle in a highly formalized series of gestures. And in addition to the private mouth rite, the people seek out a holy mouth man once or twice a year. These practitioners have an impressive set of paraphernalia, consisting of a variety of augers, awls, probes, and prods. The use of these objects in the exorcism of the evils of the mouth involves almost unbelievable ritual torture of the client. The extremely sacred and traditional character of the rite is evident in the fact that the natives return to the holy mouth man year after year, despite the fact that their teeth continue to decay. What is real ritual with a capital R? What turns these small r rituals, including cleaning one's teeth, into ritual with a capital R can be seen by looking at the difference between the Protestant and the Catholic communion in Christianity. The Protestant communion is a ritual with a small r. The clergyman takes the bread and wine and gives it to a communicant, who drinks and eats it in remembrance of Christ's sacrifice for us. It is a gesture of communication between the present congregation and Christ. Yet nothing spiritual happens or is changed. In the Catholic communion, when the priest blesses the bread and wine, a small miracle is believed to occur. The bread becomes the flesh of Christ, the wine his blood. This is not just a way of speaking. It is believed really to happen, and hence it is called transubstantiation, that is, the changing of substance. Some Catholics believe that if we took the wine after the blessing and put it under a powerful microscope, we would find that it was no longer grape juice, but had the DNA of Christ's blood. So ritual with a capital R creates a bridge between this material world and a spiritual dimension which is always there, but normally invisible. It is like plugging a device into an electric socket and then being able to tap the energy which is ever present, although concealed. Once one is plugged in, it is possible to use the energy to have effects at a distance in space or time, and to change this material world. A handshake or kiss symbolizes or expresses friendship and equality. It may also inaugurate such friendship. So it can be both expressive and instrumental. Yet it has no particular link to God or the gods, except in certain special rituals where, for example, a person kisses the Holy Cross or takes an oath of allegiance to an overlord, followed by a kiss or handshake. What ritual with a capital R can do is to bring together special words and actions in a way that automatically changes this material world. So there are rituals with a capital R to bring the rain, to make the crops flourish, to prevent sickness in animals, to cure children, to take the spirits off to the land of the dead, to make a woman fertile, or to bring success in battle. Where has ritual with a capital R gone? After the Protestant Reformation in Western Europe in the 16th century and the rise of a new scientific outlook around the same time, ritual with a capital R was supposedly banished. We have lots of ceremonies, processions, and formalized behavior, but the idea that a spiritual power could automatically be released by people saying certain words in a certain order or doing things in a formal way, for example, beating a drum or lighting candles to bring rain, seemed to the reformers and rationists both superstitious and unscientific. This skepticism has persisted among many Europeans and Americans. So, while there are many what are called secular rituals, public parades, and much of what goes on in sport and in entertainment, these are limited to this material world. This is the case even if they often give people the slightly out of this world feeling of true rituals, what has been called effervescence or excitement. These secular rituals may have great power over us. Mass parades such as Hitler's rallies or the displays for Chairman Mao, when hundreds of thousands march and wave flags, obviously move people deeply. Fascism and communism and all strong political ideologies love secular rituals since they help to control hearts and minds. Yet while they may have the psychological power of ritual with a capital R, they are not religious. They do not ask God to interfere and change this material world. Both small r and capital R ritual are immensely powerful, and they shape our lives. They obtain their power because humans are deeply affected by symbols and standardized actions. Put up certain symbols, colors, signs and shapes, play the right music, orchestrate a specific set of actions, a goose step or swinging arms, and an individual, especially if he or she is in a large crowd, will quickly be deeply transfixed. Drama and ritual are therefore very closely linked. The ancient Greeks knew this well when they talked about the purging, cathartic, transforming effect of plays. The same effects can be seen in many forms of dance and drama around the world. For instance, in Hindu societies or Japanese no performances. As humans, we find ritual and drama deeply influence much of our waking life and even our dreams. We are constrained in what we can do and what we can think by rituals, because they create paths through time which force us in a certain direction. Even when we try to release ourselves from the power of ritual, we are often trapped. The original Quakers were among the most extreme anti-ritualists among religious groups. They tried to expel all formal, standardized, repetitive behavior from their lives, in language, in gestures, and in their worship. Their services have no music, no symbols, no apparent formality. Yet the stillness and simplicity become a sort of anti-ritual, which is in some ways as compulsive and constraining as anything they were attacking. Anyone who tried to stand up and sell bits and pieces in a Quaker meeting would soon discover that there were ritual rules. What are myths? Most rituals include a mythical dimension, for they are based on a myth, or mythical stories are recited during them. So myth and ritual are inextricably linked. Yet our common understanding of myths makes it difficult for most of us to understand what they are. People often describe other people's beliefs as just myths. This assumes that myths are untrue, as if myth and factual truth are contradictory, or that they are to be distinguished from real history. We know that Robin Hood never existed, though there is a myth that he did. In a fact-obsessed and scientific culture, we use the word myth in order to describe what people believe without much foundation, or beliefs that we do not share. Yet this strong opposition between truth and fact on the one hand, and myth on the other, conceals something much more important. It fails to account for the strong hold that myth has in all our lives, whether we are explicitly religious or not. Myths are particular kinds of stories which cannot be judged by the simple criterion of scientific truth or falsehood. They are trying to say something beyond the level of ordinary factual truth. The opposition between myth and fact or truth disappears further when we consider modern science. Many cosmologists and astrophysicists now believe in the Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe, or its successor, string theory. These concepts are so abstruse and the information so complex that the theories cannot be subjected to all or many scientific proofs. They cannot be proved to be factually true. They are just a guess, a working model. So it is a paradox that some of our most rationalistic and scientific thinkers have surrounded themselves with an explanation of the origin of our universe and world that is beyond proof, and perhaps a myth in the wider sense. In doing so, they are demonstrating one of the major functions of myths, one large category of which are myths of origin. The story of the Garden of Eden in Christianity, or of the sun goddess who founded Japan, and many of the stories of the origins of drums or incest in a Nepalese village are like this. People do not usually ask whether they are literally true. They are ways of thinking about puzzling and unresolvable questions. We still do not know how human life, or life at all, arose on this planet. Myths give us complex accounts of such matters. Kipling's just so stories, such as how the camel got his hump or how the leopard got his spots, are myths in this sense. When we read them, we do not ask whether they are true or false. They just make sense at a different level. Another function of myth is as a charter or explanation of how things are as they are. Some people say that women are inferior because they came from Adam's rib, that the fascists are superior because they are descended from the ancient Teutons. But communism will finally triumph because humans in their original innocent beginnings had no property. We live by myths of many kinds and manufacture them every day to justify the inequalities and injustices, or the surprises and changes of our lives. Myths try to explain the contradictions and mentally insoluble, unresolvable tensions in our world. How is it that we seem to be both animals and yet something different from other animals? Many myths tell of the changing of humans into animals, of vampires and were-animals. How do we seem to be both mortal, born to die, yet immortal? The death and rebirth of Christ, or of King Arthur, myths of birth and rebirth in Hinduism. Many myths tell us stories to help us think through these problems. This is obviously like much great literature and drama, which puts forward these mysteries and unresolvable contradictions, and states the arguments on both sides, then leaves us to decide the truth. So myths and mysteries are closely linked. We can believe in fairies, hobbits, Harry Potter's world, Father Christmas, or the little spirits that steal children's souls in the forests around the village in Nepal. Yet if pressed as to whether they are literally true, we would be sceptical. The room for half-belief, poetic belief, as-if belief is immense, and most humans spend much of their time thinking in this way. Myths, like poetry and drama, require only a willing suspension of disbelief to exercise their power over us. What are symbols? Basically, symbols are objects, physical or immaterial, such as a sound, that stand for something else. Supposing you wanted to send someone a message to tell them that you were happy. You could do this by a direct method, such as sending them a photograph of yourself laughing. In this case, what you send them, the representation of yourself, the photograph or thing that signifies what you feel, looks just the same as the thing it represents or signifies. A photograph is a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. When you look at the photo, the link between the signifier, that is the photograph, and the signified, your feelings and face, is very strong. The two are almost identical. The relationship is explicit, an exact matching. Some very elementary picture writing or pictographic representation is like this. It is not symbolic, for example, the original Chinese characters. Or you could show your friend a smiley face. Not your own, but a conventionalized one of the kind many people send in an email. There is now some relationship between you, happiness, and the smiling face, but the gap between what you want to represent and how you represent it is a little wider. There is room for interpretation, and your friend may need to be taught to recognize a couple of lines and a couple of dots as a smiley face, and to realize that this stands for your happiness. More advanced Chinese writing and Japanese writing is like this. For example, the word for house is a picture of a house, but over the ages it has become distorted. We're still not in the land of real symbolism. The characters behind me here, Chinese characters, are of that kind. Or you could send a short note saying, "I am very happy." Now, if you examine these letters, you can see that they are absolutely arbitrary. There is no possible relationship between the letters H, A, P, P, Y and the human emotion of happiness. The letters are abstract and arbitrary symbols which have been joined together. The reader, having been taught how to decode them, can interpret them as symbols pointing towards the idea of happiness. So symbols get their power from their arbitrary and abstract nature. When we decipher them, they can affect us deeply. When a persecuted Christian saw the sign of a fish on a wall, he or she could read into it the Greek letters for the word fish, ichthyus, which could be read as the first letters of words in the phrase Jesus Christ, the Son of God and Saviour. Yet others just saw it as a fish. When the police arrived to examine a murdered man in southern Italy and find a prickly pear lying in his lap, as if by accident, they probably know it is a mafia killing. Or when you see a blue poster in a window at election time in Britain, you believe that the people inside will probably vote Conservative. Yet there is no intrinsic relationship between prickly pears and the mafia, or between blue and the Conservatives. Each culture has its symbols, and this is particularly true of colours. White is the symbol of death in Asia. Black is that symbol in Europe. Red is the royal colour in China. In many parts of the world, it is gold. Why the important colours in much of Africa should be brown, white and red has been widely discussed. Can it be related to their prominence in human life in the forms of milk, blood and feces? Whatever the reason, colours, sounds and shapes can all carry powerful meanings, as we all know too well with the swastikas of the Nazis, who perverted a benevolent Eastern symbol into one of power and hate. Symbols are enormously powerful because, although there is a commonly understood element to them, each of us can also read our own meanings into them and respond in different ways. They gain even more power when placed together in a series. When they are carefully constructed into a ritual or work of art, we are enchanted and often overwhelmed. Religion is largely about the use of these apparently arbitrary symbols, which we usually interpret at a level below our consciousness. We are a symbol-producing and symbol-consuming species. We are able both to explore and to communicate very deep truths, particularly in the most abstract symbolic forms, such as music, art, and mathematics. Yet we can also be trapped, confused, and led astray by symbols, and our minds seduced by their power. What are taboos? Symbols are often associated with boundaries, and these boundaries are in turn enforced by taboos. What are taboos? The word taboo came into our language from the Pacific island, where there was a term tapu, meaning a combination of secret and forbidden. It is a useful word for us, since we find that much of our life seems to be broken up into things we can and can't do. It is good to have a shorthand term for apparently meaningless or unexplained prohibitions. We speak of them as taboos. We classify certain things as safe, decent, acceptable, and clean, while others are dangerous, indecent, unacceptable, and dirty. Of course, what we classify in these boxes is very culture-specific, as are our reactions to breaking taboos. In some societies, to eat the brains of another human being would be taboo. In others, not to eat them when offered would be taboo. In some, for an older male to have sex with a young boy is taboo. In others, not to do so if he is in a position of initiating the youth would be shameful. Many taboos seem to be centered on periods of ambiguity, ambivalence, or in-between positions. So there are many taboos at the turning points of life, at birth, at marriage, and particularly at death. There are also taboos associated with the intersections between our body and the outside world. There are many taboos linked with menstruation, with feces and urine, with breaking wind, burping and spitting. Certain bounded groups, for example Indian castes, some Orthodox Jews and Gypsies, are particularly concerned with trying to keep certain categories apart. They are anxious about the ritual pollution or degrading danger that occurs, for instance, if we eat the flesh of certain animals, or mix milk and blood, or have sex with the wrong person or at the wrong time. These groups have taboos in a strong sense, taboos with a capital letter. That is to say that if you break a taboo, something serious will happen to you unless you purify yourself. In my Nepalese village, if you come into contact with death or touch an unclean, i.e. lower caste person, you have to go through a little purification ritual with water in which gold has been dipped. In taboo or taboo, even if you did not mean to offend, danger is there and you will be punished. The incest taboo is one of the most famous, precisely for this reason. To commit incest is to break boundaries, to mix up blood. The gods will punish you, even if you are not aware that you are breaking a taboo, as in the case of Oedipus, who unknowingly married his mother. On the other hand, most of us use the word in a much looser sense, just meaning something that one should not do. I might tell you that it is taboo to walk on the grass in King's College, Cambridge. It is taboo to spit in the street. It is taboo to wander around naked in public. Yet, if we do any of these things, though there may be social or even legal consequences, there is no particular spiritual danger. We're not polluted by walking on the grass, nor is the grass polluted by our feet. Our children will not become sick, our animals will not die if we do these things, nor will we expect to be sent to hell for them. We have broken a rule which we do not necessarily agree with, or even see the point of. There is no particular moral or spiritual danger. Indeed, as a child, you and your sister particularly delighted in the breaking of taboo and insisted on walking in the grass with me, a fellow of the colleges above taboo, whenever you could. This is because taboo, in the strong sense, works only with people who have a particular idea of a world divided into strongly defined areas of purity and impurity, of safety and danger, even of the sacred and the profane. Many of us think of the world as being roughly level and uniform in spiritual terms. There are clean things and matters out of place or dirty things, but the boundaries between them are not so rigid for us. When we come into contact with the pollution of death, we do not have to destroy everything associated with the dead person, as happens with gypsy caravans or in some Hindu funerals. What is sacrifice? It's not easy to communicate with God or the gods, and it is even more difficult to spur the divine into action on our behalf. The most obvious way to try to compel them, or him, is to offer a gift or bribe, which should prompt them, or him, to reciprocate. Obviously, this gift should be something we really value. So in societies that herd animals, the sacrifice is usually one of these precious beasts: a cow, buffalo, sheep or cockerel. So Christianity, which came out of the nomadic herding societies of the Middle East, was built around the sacrifice of sheep, culminating in the gift of God's own Son, the Lamb of God. In rice-growing cultures such as Japan, the sacrifice is of rice or rice wine. The sacrifice has two elements. There is the gift, the physical object, which is placed on the altar, and there is the spirit which it contains. So, in a Nepalese village, a cock, sheep, or buffalo is sacrificed, and the blood placed on the shrine. The gods drink the blood, but what they really consume is the spirit of the gift, the essence or soul of the sacrificed object. When they receive this, they are pleased and return a favour or protect the worshippers. In Christianity, the sacrifice was shifted from actual animals to a symbolic sacrifice of God's own Son. Yet this began to be taken very literally, and the Protestant reformers reacted to what was considered an overemphasis on the outward form. They said it was no good burning candles, burning incense, or sacrificing money. What God really wanted was an internal offering. So the idea spread that the way to please God was to give up sinful behavior. The sacrifices of or for God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. Better an obedient and disciplined heart and strong intentions to be good than the smoke of burnt offerings and streams of blood. So, over much of the world, religion has been internalized. Yet sacrifices have not gone away. Many people still give up things for Lent, or abstain from this or that, because they feel that it will somehow do them not only physical, but also spiritual good. Being a vegetarian, weight watching, giving up time and money to charities, all these are forms of sacrifice. Even in a world of consumerism and pleasure seeking, in many people there is a strong puritanical streak. Furthermore, the notion of sacrifice and its value varies enormously from culture to culture. Many British war memorials to those who were killed in the 2 world wars speak of their sacrifice. Have a look at what is written on such memorials when you travel around elsewhere. In France, it will be glory, and in Japan, you will find no such memorials with lists of names at all, though some are remembered in shrines. Why does ritual matter? Almost all of our lives revolve around patterns and rhythms of repetitive, standardized behavior. This feature of humanity has often been co-opted in the services of politics or religion. When the power of ritual is harnessed, whether it is in the formal language of prayers or political speeches, or in the compulsive movements of our bodies when we are praying or marching, our minds are constrained. Rituals give us confidence, unite us with others, and help us through our most difficult times, such as grieving or death. They help to rearrange social relations, as at a wedding, or reorder our social networks, as at a funeral. A life without ritual would be inconceivable. It would become patternless and meaningless. Yet we should remember that there is a price to pay for the power of ritual. I have often wondered why no one has ever suddenly stood up in the middle of the famous Christmas carol service at King's College, Cambridge, in order to proclaim their particular view of life, drawing the attention of the millions of listeners around the world to some cause. Yet, as I sit through the service year after year, I feel the huge weight of solemnity and ritual that makes it difficult even to cough or shift in my seat. Rituals act on us through our body and senses, so that they become entrenched in our way of life and leave us little personal control. We cannot easily escape from their power. This is true of secular rituals, as it is of those clothed in formal religion. During the Cultural Revolution in China, there were numerous rituals with a small r to worship Chairman Mao. People conscientiously observed them, like the rituals of asking for instructions in the morning and reporting back in the evening, during which millions recited quotations from Mao's works, holding the little red book pressed to their breast. Chinese friends now say that at the time they were often embarrassed and skeptical, but could not resist the group pressure. So all we can do is to celebrate rituals, but at the same time to stand back and examine the ways in which we are constrained, brainwashed, as it were, by ritual power. Freedom of a sort comes from understanding and controlling the rituals we perform and are involved in.